Steve here. It's the show where I answer your questions, and this week my first question comes from Thomas Swords. Should Hillary and Bernie both play elder statesperson roles for the 2020 election? I think it's time for the first generation ex-president, and there are some really fine Democrats who could fill that role, including Cory Booker, Kirsten Gillibrand, Kamala Harris, and perhaps others I can't think of at the moment. But given how divided and confrontational their supporters are, I would love to see Hillary and Bernie stay behind the scenes, thus allowing a fresher face to unite the left against what is frankly an authoritarian, anti-democratic Republican Party. Thomas, I could not agree with you more. The names you mention are good. I might also suggest someone like Keith Ellison. I think he might be a good possibility as well. And yeah, I think that, look, there are certain aspects of its identity that the Democratic Party really needs to embrace and to emphasize if it wants to be a successful party in the future. One of the things is it needs to be the party of inclusion, the party of diversity, the party of minorities, the party of equality, but it also needs to be the party of the young people. It needs to be the party of youth. It needs to be the party of turning the page, of not hanging on to the past. That's literally what conservatives do. Conservatives want to keep everything the way it is. They want to preserve the status quo. They don't want to change. They fight change whenever they find it, unless it's change as in rolling things back to the way they were before. They'll change things back. They just don't want to change things going forward. Whereas Democrats ought to be progressive. We ought to be moving things forward, building to the future, pushing for positive, usually long overdue change. And one of the things that needs to happen is a changing of the guard of the Democratic Party at a national level. We need new candidates. No more Hillary Clinton, no more Bernie Sanders. We need to move on to something else. And Hillary and Bernie both have very strong, enthusiastic bases of support. They both have very important roles to play in the party, I truly believe. But they need to be in supporting roles. They need to be boosters. They need to be ralliers. They need to be cheerleaders. They need to be, as you said, elder statespeople, not candidates for the office themselves. I think that's the best role that they can play. Keep rallying the troops, but step aside, move out of the way, let someone else come up and be the next person. I agree with you 100%. Specific hieroglyphics, assuming you've watched The Room, please. Steve Shives, how dare you keep promoting atheist content to young impressionable minds when you know that there is a God that walks among us? Tommy Wiseau. I've only just watched The Room the other day, and it's the first film in my life to have ever left me truly baffled. To imply the film is broken is to wrongly suggest it ever worked. It's so misogynistic that it makes Michael Bay look like a third-wave feminist. Wiseau's acting is so horrible, he even has bad acting in real life. How the fuck do you do that? My question for you today is, what are your favorite moments from The Room? The scenes that my wife and I quote to each other a lot usually are Lisa scenes. I think Lisa is she's definitely my favorite character because, again, she's like this nightmare version of a woman. She's a misogynist's caricature of what a woman is. Some of her dialogue is just amazing. Like when Johnny comes home and catches her talking with Michelle, and Michelle leaves, and she said, and Johnny says, well, what were you talking about? And she says, oh, it was just girl talk. And they exchange a few more lines. And then Johnny says, well, what were you and Michelle talking about? And Lisa looks at him and goes, it was girl talk. I just told you that. We say that to each other in this house over and over again. It's one of our very frequently used inside jokes. So that would probably be one of my favorite moments. When Johnny drops the glass after he's been drinking, when they dissolve, they do the lap dissolve, and they've been drinking now for a while, and they're both drunk, and he's standing up and he's holding his glass, and he finishes his glass, and then he drops it, and the sound effect they use for the breaking glass sounds like somebody threw a fucking plate as hard as they could at the floor. Like it's this little, he drops a whiskey glass and it has this crash that sounds like somebody just dropped a platter on the floor and it shattered. I love that. There's so many that I could just rattle off quotes to you for the rest of this episode. I love The Room so much. It's one of the most delightfully weird, awful things I've ever seen. Welcome to the club. Kaylee Berkwin. Do you think people who have some sort of platform, such as YouTube, Twitter, blog, whatever, bear some responsibility for the actions of their audience in relation to things they've done or said? This is probably more specific to YouTube, where some YouTubers will, in their videos, put forth an aggressive opinion about some person or group, or out some person they've targeted, and their audience, without specifically being instructed to, will often harass that targeted person or perpetuate that opinion about the group vociferously, often leading to a very toxic environment for the targeted group or person. Is the person who put out that video, opinion, etc. in some way responsible for the actions of their audience? Especially if they don't even try to at least moderate their audience? Certainly they're responsible. They're not solely responsible, because you also have to put responsibility on the individuals who choose to act in the ways that they act. But yes, a share of the responsibility must rest with the person who makes the video. Here's the thing. When you make a video or post an article or tweet something and you have a large following, say in the tens or hundreds of thousands, as many of these people do, and you choose to express yourself in a way, especially if it's about a particular individual or a group of people, particularly a marginalized group of people, and you choose to express yourself in regards to that group or that person in a way that is hostile and aggressive and demeaning and derogatory, you're sending a message to your followers that that is how your target ought to be treated. And then many of your followers, even if you don't tell them to, or in some cases, even if you tell them not to, they will emulate your behavior. They will follow the example that you have set. So all of these people who have YouTube channels that are devoted entirely to just ridiculing and attacking people, and then they try to say, well, what? It's not my responsibility if people who watch my videos go and give the people I make videos about a hard time. I didn't tell them to do that, or I put a disclaimer at the front of all my videos and I tell people, don't go harass people. That is less important than the example that you set. People will follow your example. If your example of the kind of discourse that you're interested in having is insulting and demeaning and bigoted and harassing and abusive, that is the tone that you have set. And you will attract people to your work who respond to that tone and will most likely will respond to other people in that same way by following the role model that you have provided for them. And that is the point that a lot of these people who try to have it both ways and do content that is abusive and harassing, but also try to escape responsibility for things that their followers do, that's the point that they miss, either intentionally or because their heads are just that far up their asses. When you set that kind of example, that is the result that you get. Corey Donaldson, have you heard about Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's apology to the LGBTQ civil servants who were unfairly discharged from the Canadian Armed Forces from the 1950s to the 1990s? And what is your thoughts on it? Yes, I did. I saw that, and I was very pleased to see that. I thought that was a wonderful thing. I did read some responses from people who made sure to emphasize that that alone is not enough, that an apology is nice, and what that apology symbolizes is wonderful and is in many ways a healing act for people who were affected by that policy, where people were fired from their jobs because of their sexuality for decades. The act of the head of government apologizing on behalf of the government to the people who were harmed as a result of that discriminatory policy, that does have a great deal of meaning. That means something. And I know a lot of people in Canada were very affected by it and very appreciative of it. But it's not enough. You need to continue to reform policy, and you need to continue to advocate for change and equality in government and in society as a whole, so that LGBTQ people are treated with fairness and are included in society in a way that recognizes their basic rights and their human dignity And Canada, the impression I get is that in many ways Canada is ahead of the United States in that respect, but it also apparently still has some distance to travel there as well. So the apology was wonderful, and I hope that it is followed up with further action. I also noticed, I read that there was a class action settlement where people who were affected by those firings from the 50s through the 90s, either they or their survivors, their family members, what have you, can apply for compensation through I think it was $150 million class action settlement related to this. That's a wonderful thing too. And that's the sort of thing that's the sort of thing, frankly, that a lot of folks would like to see happen in the United States for a bunch of different things. I mean, there are so many groups in the United States that have historically been mistreated. African Americans, Native Americans, who could not only use an apology and the symbolism of that, hearing their government say, what happened to you was wrong, it should never have happened, we are sorry. That would mean a lot to people, but also some reparation, some recompense for the injuries that were suffered by, at this point it's been so long, it would be people's ancestors, but nonetheless, I think that would be a completely fair and necessary thing to do. And I would love to see something like that happen in this country. But I'm not holding my breath. So for the moment, I will have to live vicariously through Canada. So good on you, Canada. Scott Bressinger, I'm wondering what your thoughts about identity politics are. The dictionary or Wikipedia definition seem to differ from many who use the phrase in a negative manner. On the right, it's basically code for those people, wink wink, nudge nudge. But even some lefties I normally agree with become angry at the mere mention of the phrase. Many seem convinced it represents the end of Western civilization, though, sarcasm alert, I doubt their sincerity for some reason. I personally think it's one of the least important things we need to be worrying about right now. What's your take? Thanks as always. The way you can tell that people are using it in a very subjective, very self-serving way is a lot of the people who, for instance, will say very, very vicious things about Black Lives Matter. They will say that Black Lives Matter is itself a racist group or is a terrorist group or some other vile charge that they will make against Black Lives Matter. Many of those same people will say, look, I believe in civil rights. I think Martin Luther King was a great man. So identity politics was okay when Martin Luther King was alive. Because that's identity politics. Martin Luther King was an advocate for the rights of black people. That is identity politics. But it was okay when he did it, because you said that you thought he was great. You're okay with Martin Luther King. So identity politics are okay back then. They're just not okay now. The implication is that identity politics is illegitimate because the inequalities that people are using identity politics to try and address don't actually exist. That's the implication. That Black Lives Matter is an illegitimate group, and the identity politics in which they engage are illegitimate because the problems that they're complaining about aren't real. That's the implication. And that's the most dangerous part. And that's what people are really complaining about. They're not complaining about identity politics itself because they're perfectly happy to support and even engage in certain types of identity politics themselves. It's when a group that they disagree with or a group that they feel threatens their own privilege starts to make too much noise or get a little too aggressive or gain a little too much traction culturally, then all of a sudden it's, oh, this identity politics, oh, it's just tearing us apart. It's completely biased and selective and self-serving. Ahoyerno. France is currently in the Fifth Republic. Belgium recently had its sixth constitutional rewrite. The German Weimar Constitution was rewritten in 1945 for obvious reasons. In all cases, the adoption of those constitutions would have violated the previous one, but that doesn't matter. That's what advanced nations do when the Constitution is failing. Fuck the old Constitution. The American Constitution is beyond broken. The Civil War should have resulted in the Second Republic, but it just led to a handful of half-assed amendments. The current crises you're faced with can't be solved just with a dozen amendments. The USA has to abandon the current Constitution and write a new one from scratch. How close am I? I think you're right. I think it's healthy for a society to maybe not completely tear down the old Constitution and start from scratch, but to go back and to reevaluate on a regular basis. Thomas Jefferson once wrote in a letter to James Madison that he thought that not just the Constitution, but that all laws should expire after 19 years, and then they should have to be reinstated. And Madison felt that that was a little too extreme, because he said, you know, if everything expires after 19 years, that would prevent the next generation from having to take on the burden of the previous generation, but it would also prevent the next generation from reaping rewards from seeds that were planted in the previous generation. So there's a good and a bad part. But I do think Jefferson was onto something, in the sense that it might not be a terrible idea to have a kind of revisitation of the Constitution every 20 years or so, to have a national constitutional convention every 20 years, where you don't necessarily throw everything out, but you open it up and you allow for changes to be made in a way that would be much simpler than if they were made under the normal, through the normal system of amendments and so forth. And then the new Constitution would then have to be re-ratified as it was the last time. I think that's actually a good idea. I think it keeps democracy young, it keeps democracy active, it makes people feel like they have a stake in shaping their government and shaping their society in a way that maybe they don't have right now, where you're born into a system that feels entrenched and permanent and unchangeable, and the best you can do is try to manipulate it in certain ways to benefit people who aren't being served, but you can't really make any real fundamental changes because that's just outside your power. I think that might be a good thing. And I think reorienting our attitude toward the Constitution and our government in that way, making it something that is more permeable and more closely tied to us and to our values, would be a positive thing. And you know what the bell means? It means that it's time for
the lightning round.
Rage Street. If you could have anyone else doing videos with you, who would it be? And would one of your choices be Eli Bosnick? Bit of a fan. Oh yeah, I love Eli. I would love to collaborate with Eli. We've never actually done a proper collaboration. I've had him on. He was kind enough to join me and Christy Winters as a guest in a hangout a while ago, but we haven't like collaborated on a video. So I would love to work with Eli. I'd love to work with Christy. My favorite collaborator is probably Jason Harding. We do a podcast together, and any little bit that we have a chance to work on something together, especially if it's something creative, I would jump at any chance to work with him, because I think he's just awesome. Secular scholar, do you think that some of the Christians and Muslims and other religious folk that hold up their holy text as sacred are idolaters, their faith being the books of their faith? Yeah, I think other people have mentioned this before, in fact, I think Aaron Ra has made this point when he's debated Christians in the past, that you don't worship God, you worship a book. And I think the same can be said of certain forms of Muslim belief as well, that the Quran is held up as essentially an object of worship, even if it's not called that, because it's very important that Allah be the only object of worship. But practically speaking, the attitude toward the Quran is so deferential and so worshipful that you might as well say that they worship the book. So yeah, I mean, they clearly would not call it idolatry. A Christian would not say that loving the Bible the way they love it is a form of idolatry. But from the outside, it looks like it's so close. Maybe it's not exactly the same thing, but it's so close that the distinction at a certain point becomes irrelevant. Sabrina Luizini's Meredith. Don't leave me hanging, Steve. Let me know how you like Shatner as Two-Face. Also, as we're entering the holiday season, I have a seasonal question for you. Who is the best Santa and why? You can pick from any medium, animated, live action, etc. I like Shatner as Two-Face. I thought it was a good movie. I didn't like it as much as the first one. I thought that it was more one-dimensional than the first one. The first one had that extra layer where they were sort of riffing on the series itself, with Batman sort of becoming a villain by becoming over-obsessed with making people follow the rules. I thought that was just a really wonderful spin on that characterization of Batman from the old show, and there really wasn't anything like that in the Batman versus Two-Face one. But it was still a lot of fun, and it's a great nostalgia piece, and of course it's always going to have a special place in my heart because it was the last time Adam West played Batman. And I enjoyed it a lot. And I thought Shatner did really good as Two-Face. It makes me wonder what he would have been like if he had been able to play Two-Face in the original show back in the 60s. That would have been something. And best Santa from Ernest Saves Christmas. Is there another one? Is there another Santa besides Santa from Ernest Saves Christmas? I'm not familiar with that. Yeah, I would say Santa from Ernest Saves Christmas. Luke Lee, Steve, which true crime documentary series do you like better, Making a Murderer or the Paradise Lost trilogy? I gotta go Paradise Lost. I think the film format is an advantage there. I think Making a Murderer was awesome, but it was very it was very binge watchy. It was constructed in such a way so there was a hook at the end of every episode, which is great because it really draws you in. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. But in terms of a documentary story, of a documentary film, I think the film format lends itself to a better presentation, a certainly more artful presentation. So I would go with Paradise Lost of the two options. Malevolent Divinity, do you think that a Superman movie with a similar tone to Thor Ragnarok would be worth viewing? Like, maybe without the hella bits. Well, I still have not seen Thor Ragnarok, so I can't say specifically, but if you're talking just in general, a Superman movie with a lighter tone, with maybe more of a comic touch, a better sense of humor, that's more of an adventure movie than just a series of exhausting fight scenes between Superman and some big CGI thing, then yeah. That's more optimistic, where the hero is more heroic. Yes, I would love to see a movie like that. I would love to see a Superman movie that is more in the spirit, if not the style, of the Marvel movies, including the Thor movies. Although I haven't seen Thor Ragnarok yet, so I can't say specifically. Der Wunderbar Bar, where does speaking of Superman, where does Clark Kent put his civvies when he changes into Superman? That's a question that has always stumped me. Well, you're in luck, you asked the right person. The traditional answer, going back to the Silver Age, I don't know if this is still canon or not, and I don't care, is that when he changes into Superman, he compresses his Clark Kent clothes, folds them up real super tight, and then he sticks them in a pocket in his cape. So they're folded up real nice and flat and tiny. I guess maybe, I don't know if he has a device that does it or he uses his super strength to just fold them up really tight, and then he tucks them into a pocket in his cape so that they're tucked at easy access. They're within reach, but they're out of the way. So that is the traditional answer. Cape pocket. There you go. Johnny the Wolf. Hey Steve, as someone who has to watch bad movies for his podcast, what do you think is the healthiest way to deal with bad movies for people like me who do not have to watch them? To force yourself to watch them and risk getting traumatized in the process, or to just skip them and enjoy blissful ignorance? Well, if you're the type of person that will be upset by them and you won't enjoy them, and you don't have to watch them, then yeah, skip them. Like, you don't have to. There's no law that says you have to watch bad movies. But my attitude, at least since I've been an adult, has been to watch them for entertainment value and to enjoy them ironically and to laugh at them and to take I've learned to take a great deal of joy in watching a bad movie, especially if you're watching it with someone who has the same attitude and you can make fun of it together. That's one of the greatest gifts that Mystery Science Theater ever gave to me, that you can watch a movie that is a bad movie on its own, but it can still give you joy if you watch it with someone, or if you approach it with the right attitude. And in a way, you can even learn to appreciate it. Even though you may not be appreciating it in the way that the makers of the film intended you to, you can still learn to appreciate it and find a level of affection for it that you might not have found otherwise. But if you're not of the mindset that is interested in doing that, then you can skip it. You don't have to watch a bad movie if you don't want to. If it's going to piss you off, why bother? You don't need that. John Brockman, I saw Phantom Menace opening weekend. I saw Attack of the Clones a few weeks after it came out. One night I got drunk and watched episode 3 on DVD. I felt so dirty the next morning. How did the prequel trilogy sit with you? Oh, I didn't like any of them. I saw Phantom Menace opening weekend, probably opening day actually. I saw Attack of the Clones opening weekend, and then I still have not seen episode 3 all the way through from beginning to end in one sitting. I mean, I've caught bits and pieces of it here and there. I've sat and watched through some of it at friends' houses and then got up and left, or I came in late or whatever. But I have never made a special effort to sit down and watch episode 3 from beginning to end in one sitting. Eventually, I'm going to have to, because eventually we're surely going to review it on late seating. Probably not for a couple more years, but I'm going to have to at some point. And I mean, after episode 2, I just thought, oh, the hell with this. So that's how the prequel trilogy sat with me. Yanada, on net neutrality. My stance on Trump is irrelevant, as I am Norwegian. Personally, from my point of view, it was hard to determine who was the shittiest candidate. But I am a free speech absolutist and still support net neutrality. Is it in fact essential to free speech? It is in fact essential to free speech. So this assumption that those of us who would argue for free speech would agree to get rid of net neutrality is unfortunately a bit absurd. And yet there are so many people who claim to be free speech absolutists and claim to support net neutrality who nonetheless supported Donald Trump and continue to make excuses for him. So you explain that to me. If they really cared about net neutrality, they wouldn't have supported Donald Trump, because Donald Trump and the Republican Party in general has been anti-net neutrality from the beginning. They can say that they support net neutrality all they want. Their actions show their words to be fucking meaningless. How about that? Anyway, that was the last question. It's time now for the shout out. And the shout out this week goes, hey, we're going to kick it old school. I'm giving a shout out to a YouTube channel. Fancy that. The shout out this week goes to the YouTube channel of the wonderful podcast, the Gaytheist Manifesto. Of course, this has been Callie Wright's podcast for several years. I've been happy to be a guest on it before. I think I've shouted it out before as a podcast, but Callie has started a YouTube channel for the Gaytheist Manifesto. It's just in its infancy. I think it only has about 100 subscribers, but she's not only reposting podcast episodes, she's also doing videos, like original videos, interviews with people, and special sort of one-shot videos where she does like vlogging type stuff, and it's really cool. Callie is one of my favorite people. She's awesome and wonderful, and I would love to see her YouTube channel grow and become just as popular as her podcast, because if there is anything we need desperately on YouTube, especially in atheist circles, it is more positive, progressive people doing YouTube content, doing atheist-themed content, or content aimed at an atheist, skeptical audience. There are so many fucking awful, shitty people who are doing skeptic or atheist-themed YouTube stuff, that the more positive, good people who are socially conscious, who are part of a wide diversity of identities coming in and offering their opinions and making their voices heard, the more of that we can get, the better. And Callie is one of the most awesome representatives of that movement, of that part of the atheist community that I really want to see more represented here on YouTube. So go check out the Gaytheist Manifesto's YouTube channel, linked in the description box. Callie Wright, one of my favorite people. I also want to remind you, as I always do, that tickets are on sale for TAC, the Atheist Conference. Speaking of that good half, that better part of the atheist community that we're trying to attract and stimulate and motivate and mobilize, TAC is all about that. It is the Atheist Conference. It takes place next year in New York, July 6, 7, and 8 in New York City at the Roosevelt Hotel. I will be there. Callie Wright will be there. So will Christy Winters and Foxy Jezebel and ContraPoints and the one janitor. Aaron Ra is going to be there. Mandisa Thomas is giving the keynote address, and a lot of other people that either have been announced and are listed on the website or haven't been announced yet, but hopefully will be there joining us as well. It's going to be a wonderful, awesome event. The atheist community really trying to put its best foot forward and inspire a new generation of atheist and skeptical and secular activists to make sure that this movement starts to move in a forward, positive direction. So I hope you can join me and all of us at TAC next year, July 6, 7, and 8. You can go to theatheistconference.com to buy your tickets and to make your hotel reservations, and I hope I see you there. I also want to remind you to check out the Lemme Listen family of podcasts, especially the Late Seating podcast, the movie review podcast that the great Jason Harding co-hosts with me, where we take a fresh look at a classic film, a film that has a reputation of either being good or bad. We review it, we summarize the plot, we make fun of it a little, and we decide whether it deserves its reputation, whether it's got a good or a terrible reputation. And this week, today, you can listen to our brand new episode, which is our review of certainly the most beloved of all these Star Wars films, The Empire Strikes Back. You can listen to our review of The Empire Strikes Back. You can listen to all of the past episodes of Late Seating and all of the episodes of all of the awesome Lemme Listen podcasts by going to LemmeListenPodcast.com. And just a reminder, our new Empire Strikes Back episode goes up today, so make sure you go check that out. It's a really good one. It was a lot of fun to do. Whew, that's it for me, everybody. I'm out of here for another week. I want to thank all of you for watching, and I especially want to thank those of you who had questions. In order for me to do this, you have to ask. So please do leave a comment on this video asking me your questions for next time. You can ask me anything about anything. Nothing is too serious, nothing is too silly. I will answer as many of your questions as I possibly can in the next video. So until then, take care, everybody. Hey folks, one more thing before I go. Hope you enjoyed this one. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe. And also please consider helping me to make more videos like this one by supporting this channel through Patreon. You can go to patreon.com/Steve Shives to become a patron. See you next time.